Okay, so back here in my mask material, I got some settings set up here. And as soon as I start kind of building something and I got something working, I want to start commenting my work. Don't leave it all to the end. Comment as you go. So if I select these assets here and hit C on the keyboard, that's going to give me a comment frame around it. And I'm just going to call this base color. And inside here is where all my nodes related to base color is going to go. So I'm going to just give myself a little bit of space to work. I'm going to kind of expand this because I know some more is going on here. Okay, I'm going to jump down to my normal map for now. Because another very common setting that we're going to be working with is I want the ability to either make my normal map a bit stronger or a bit less strong. I don't want to have to go back to Substance just because it's looking a bit too sharp here in Unreal Engine. I want to be able to make those adjustments here. So with a normal map, as we discussed at the top of class, a normal map isn't a colored map here. It is a map that is telling us the angle at which to bounce the light off of it, right? And if I look at each channel, the red channel basically represents X and Y, or sorry, X, so left and right, right? Right? That's representing the angle at which the light should bounce off of it in a left to right angle. So left being where it has a lot of red pixels, to the right where it has not a lot of red pixels. The green represents up and down, right? And this is the one that is flipped, inverted sometimes. If you have an OpenGL, it would look more like this on the kind of downslope. Here, it would look like this. So this is the green channel. This is referring to what direction these pixels should bounce the light in. And then blue is basically just like straight up. So imagine that's an arrow. We're looking at it from above. I don't know how to draw something like that. And yeah, this is basically just looking at from an overtop view. So with all three of these things combined, it's getting an X, Y, and Z coordinate to bounce the light off of it. So this is a data map that we're looking at here when we're working with normal maps. So I can't simply say, take a normal map and multiply all these numbers down, right? If I just make this image kind of darker, oops, like if I just make this darker, on this actual thing here, just make my brightness. So if I do this, this doesn't really make any sense because I'm changing the angle of all the values. The X, Y, Z value is now changing. The blue value is pointing off kind of in a weird direction. So I can't just do that. So if I want to make adjustments to a normal map, you can't rely on your blend modes that you're accustomed to. But we have our own set of blend modes when we deal with normals. So the one I want to use, though, is going to be a flatten normal. And this node does as it says it's going to. It basically is going to kind of increase the blue channel while decreasing the red and green channel. So it's going to make it look at like this flat purple color, basically, by using this node. So I can input in a constant into this flatness by holding down 1 and left-clicking, plugging that up. And we can see here in brackets it says S, and in brackets it says V3. This means that it's expecting a vector 3, or a 3 constant, in this channel. And in this channel, it's just expecting a scalar, or a 1 constant. So if you see S, that means that it's just expecting a 1 constant. So what this will do is it will flatten the normal that we have. So I can convert this parameter, or this constant, into a parameter. And I'm going to just call this normal intensity. And I'm going to put this in my adjustments group. I'm not going to give it a sort priority right now because I don't really know where my normals are going to fit in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so with this parameter set, I now have the ability to kind of flatten this by increasing this value. You can see those normal maps are starting to disappear the closer I get up to 1. I can also go the opposite direction and make the normals a little bit more intense. At a certain point, yeah, it's going to really break things, but you can kind of punch them a little bit if you need to. However, I find this a little bit kind of backwards in my brain. I feel like if I want my normals to be flat, I want to bring my value down to 0, so that there's 0 normals going on. So I find that this is a little bit kind of backwards for how my brain works. So I'm going to just make a little adjustment here that says I'm going to set my default value to 1, but then I'm going to immediately invert it. So to do an invert, or to get an invert node here, I can't just type an invert like you would think you'd be able to. We need to think in math terms. So for this, I would do a 1 minus, which is essentially an invert, right? If I take something minus 1, or something to the minus 1, it's going to give me the invert of it. So what this is going to do, it's going to take 1 minus 1, so the end result of this is going to be 0. But how it looks to me is the default value is now going to be 1. Scrub this a little bit. Default's going to be 1, so now I can kind of drag this down to 0 to make it flatter. That's just how my brain kind of works. If I want to make it more intense, I would give it a higher number, right? That seems a little bit more logical to me. Okay, so I got some normal parameters here. So I'm going to comment these nodes, call it normal. And you can color code these comments to kind of make it a little bit easier to read and stuff like that, if you want. And if you find yourself using the same color over and over again, you can drag this color swatch up here so that if you want to use that same color somewhere else, you now have a color swatch for it. So I'm going to set this to kind of a pinkish color. And I'll set this to kind of a greenish color. Okay, so we've got some normal controls for intensity. Next thing I probably want to do is have some controls for my roughness, to make it either more or less rough, or to be able to kind of just crunch and kind of add some contrast to my roughness. So my ORM map is currently using the roughness map in the green channel. So this is the channel that I want to kind of drag out to make some adjustments to. So just in terms of like some math terms, when I'm using this multiply blend node, it's literally multiplying numbers together, right? If I multiply, a 0.8 by a value here, everything is going to kind of decrease by 20%, right? That's how multiplication works. If I come down here and I use this 1 minus math node, it's going to take whatever the value, it's going to take 1, whatever the value that I plug into it. And it's going to give me the result of that. So a lot of the kind of adjustments and modifications we're doing, when you look at it in black and white in math terms, it can make a little bit more sense. But for what we're doing here, when I want to adjust kind of like a contrast of something, we're going to often use a power node. So that's like saying like x to the power of 2. 10 to the power of 2 would be 100, for example. So if I drag out from here and I type in power, this is going to kind of crunch away some of the gray tones to be either closer to the white or crunch them away to be closer to the black, which for a roughness map is probably going to be pretty useful. So for this, I will feed in a constant into the exponent, and I can either hold down 1 and left click and convert this to a parameter, Or another way that you can do this is by right-clicking on the actual parameter, and you can say promote to parameter. This is going to give me a parameter, and it will give me the name, which oftentimes I'll have to change anyways, but that's another way that we can create parameters. So for this, I'll just call this roughness contrast. And for my default value, I'm going to give it a default value of what? If I wanted to have 5 to the power of something, what does that something need to be in order for 5 to still be the number? Yes, 1. So anything to the power of 1 is going to be the same value. So I'm going to give it a default value of 1 here so that I don't automatically start adjusting my roughness map. And then I'm going to plug the result of this into my roughness output here. And I'm going to plug this parameter into my adjustments group. Okay, now as you're working, as you are kind of building up your master material and stuff, it's a great idea to, once you complete something, once you think it should work, jump on over to your material instance and just have a look to see if it does. One thing you could do is if you want to actually see the material on the actual actor, you can select the geometry from your content browser and then hit this brick icon down here, and that will apply the material to the actual actor that you're working on. In this case, that's not going to work because I have 2 material slots, but did want to point that out. Okay, so now I can kind of test this out, and I can see how my roughness contrast works. So the higher I go, the kind of sharper my highlights are going to be. The lower I go, the more kind of spread out and diffuse that normal map is going to be. It hasn't adjusted kind of the intensity of it, it's just adjusted the contrast of it. If I just look at my roughness, by going to this roughness buffer visualization or roughness blend mode, we can kind of get a better sense of what's actually happening. You can see it's removing those gray tones and punching it closer towards the white, or removing those gray tones and making it spread out towards a flatter color. Okay. So I have that. I have my normal intensity here that I can kind of punch this if I want it to, right? I'm starting to kind of build up the controls necessary. Okay, so I mentioned that there's no controls currently for kind of yeah, we'll jump over that for a minute. So I'm going to just grab this right now, and I'm going to comment this as ORM adjustments. Because I might have some other properties that aren't just roughness related, but I could kind of separate this to just be a roughness comment as well. It's up to you. Okay, so I mentioned that there's probably some other properties with base color that I'd like to adjust. One of which is often going to be a saturation. So if I want to kind of desaturate things or make things more saturated, that's often something that I would find useful. So we have a node here, and you would think it would be called saturation, but that actually doesn't do that. This actually makes it a value between 0 and 1. So what we would actually want is a desaturate node if I want to adjust the saturation. So I'm going to grab my desaturation, or I'm going to plug the result of my color tint into here. I'm now going to promote this to a parameter, and I'm going to call this saturation. I'm going to give this a default value of 1 and plug the result of this into base color. And we'll see as we kind of set it up this way, this is another one of those situations where it's going to feel just a bit backwards. You can see it's desaturated everything now, and I didn't group it, so it's put it into its own group. So in order to get my saturation back, I have to kind of bring this down to 0. So that seems backwards to me, right? So I'm going to do the same thing I did with my normal intensity, where I'm just going to give it an invert node here, a 1 minus node, so that I can leave the default value at 1, plug this into my adjustments group, and now when I want to kind of make adjustments, if I want to increase the saturation, I can raise it. If I want to decrease the saturation, I can reduce it. And that's just a logical kind of format to work with. So this is a handy one to have, because oftentimes I'm going to take it and it's like, yeah, it's a bit too standing out-ish. And this way I can just kind of bring it down. Okay, so my normal maps, jumping down here, one thing that we'll often do is we are pretty limited by how kind of fine detail I can have in my normal maps, right? Because at the end of the day, these are all pixels. If I wanted to have kind of a bump in between, you know, here and here, well, I can't really do that because there's not enough pixels to put a bump there. But what if I needed it, right? What if this is the resolution that I was capped out at, so I can't add any bumps into the actual texture, but I still needed to have a bump on it because I am kind of right up close to my model like this, and I want to see some bumps. Well, we can do something called using a detail normal map. And a detail normal map is basically just a tiling normal map. So it's a tiling texture just of normals, and usually just of noise, which we can then tile, say, 200 times. And it's going to take that texture, tile it 200 times, so that when I'm looking at it here, it's not relying on a 2K map and the pixels that are there. It's relying on this texture map tiled a whole bunch of times, spread out over the entire model. So that's something that we'll often include for, especially in first-person games, because player can get their face right up against the wall, and we should see some nice detail there. So to get a normal map kind of blended onto here, this is where I said we don't want to be using the typical blend modes, but we have that blend angle corrected normals. So blend angle corrected normals. So if you want to merge two normal maps together, this is the node that we want to use. So I'm going to plug the result of this flattened normal into the base normal. This is going to then read the output of this. And then for the additional normals, I want to have the ability to have another normal map here. So I'm going to duplicate this normal parameter just by Control-C and Control-V. And then I'm going to name this normal parameter as detail normal. I would like the ability to adjust the intensity of that detail normal map. So I'm just going to copy this formula that I've created here by Control-C and Control-V down here. And I'm just going to change the name so that I get a unique parameter for here. If I kept it the same name, it would still work, but I would adjust the base normal and the detail normal intensity at the same time, which isn't something I want. Okay. Then I can plug the result of this into this additional normal maps, and then plug the result of that into my normal channel up here. Okay, so now I have the option of adding in a detail normal map. I'm going to hit save here. But with the detail normal map, I'm going to kind of multiply this like hundreds of times, or dozens of times, more than once anyways. All these other maps here, basically I just want them to tile once, just read the 0 to 1 UV space. But this one I want to tile. So I need to adjust the UVs of this to say, take your UVs, take your 0 to 1 space UVs, and then multiply that by 100. So that it does that 0 to 1, 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 100 times. Just like we would do it in Maya by saying, you know, repeat this UVs 3 times or 4 times. I want to do the same thing here. So each one of these maps, each one of these sampler, texture sample nodes has a UV input. This number here is referring to what UV set to actually look in. So we can have multiple UV sets. We'll get into that at a later time. But I could change that here, or I can define how many times should it read this UV. So I'm going to get my UV coordinates. So I'm going to hold down U and left click. This is getting my texture coordinates. So I'll say texture coordinates of 0. Going to multiply that. So that's the 0 to 1 space. Going to multiply that, holding down M and left clicking. Going to multiply it by a value. I want to convert this to a parameter. Right click, convert to parameter. And this is going to be called detail normal tiling. What should my default value here be? If I multiply 5 by 0, what do I get? What's the result of that? 0. Right. So if I did that here, I'd be left with 0 UVs. Multiply 5 by 1. What is the answer? 5. Exactly. Multiply anything by 1, it's the original number. If I multiply dog by 1, what is the result of that? Dog. Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing. So I want to make sure that my default value, where it makes sense to multiply it and it to be the same result, I'm going to make sure that default value is 1. So I'm going to plug the result of this into my UVs. When I want to tile this 200 times, I would plug in 200 in my material instance, and it's going to repeat this texture map 200 times. So that's what's going on here. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. I'm going to make sure that this is in my adjustments group. Again, I'll adjust my sorting priority at the end. But now I can see that I got some parameters here. They're a little bit out of order and such. And just to test this working, I can see my detail normal map is here. I'm going to just throw a random detail normal map. Sure. This is a tiling normal map. It's not a very good one for our purposes, but it will tile. We'll get the idea of it. I'm going to plug that into my textures folder here. It came in as a normal map. That's perfect. Save all. So here I'm really close up, and I can see that my base normal maps are really starting to kind of fall apart, right? I'm able to see some artifacting because I'm so close. The pixels have run out. So if I apply my detail normal map here, right now it doesn't look great because it's only tiling it once. So if I increase my tiling, increase it, say, sure, 50, and then adjust my detail normal intensity, you can kind of see the result that's happening. All the base normal maps are still showing through, but I'm able to add just a bit of detail, a bit of breakup that just wouldn't be possible if I was baking down that detail into a single normal map. So this isn't the best normal map, detail normal map to use for this, but you get the idea of it. It allows me to get real close up and get the resolution that I wouldn't be able to get through baking a normal map. And you can create these normal maps anyway, right? Just create a tiling texture in Substance Designer, get the export of a normal map for it, and you're good to go. Okay, I'm going to stop this video because it's getting a bit long.